Hi, I'm Kitty Feldy, and welcome to this edition of the Book Club of the Air for Young Adults. This is our conversation about really good young adult novels with some of the experts in the field, and those are the readers. And our panel today, they are all from Edgewood Middle School out in West Covina. And let me introduce to you from, I guess, right to left would be Danielle Johnson. Thanks for being with us. And next to her is, I knew I'd do this, Desiree, right? Okay, that's Desiree Espinoza and Brianna Lujan. Thank you all so much for being with us. Let's talk a little bit about the book, which this month is Sorceress by Celia Rees, and it's a sequel of sorts to her first one, which was called Witch Child. But let's talk about specifically Sorceress. Who wants to give us the plot here? Desiree?
Okay. It's about this girl named Agnes, and she goes to school in Boston, and her heritage is of Native Americans, and so they're really into I'd say medicines and stuff, and her aunt's a medicine woman, and so she starts having visions of what she believes to be her ancestor named Mary, and these visions get stronger throughout the book.
Tell us, Danielle, a little bit about Mary.
Mary is basically a colonial age white woman, and she all of a sudden gets lost in a snowstorm, and a wolf comes and saves her, and she just kind of gets basically thrown into a Native American style life.
And Brianna, tell us a little bit about the first book.
Witch Child, well, it starts out with Mary's grandma. She gets hung for being a witch because it's in the period where there is witch hunts and everything. So her mother, named Emma, she takes Mary and she tells her to go to a settlement, which is called Beulah, and there she's forced to flee because she's prosecuted as a witch. So she has to go into the woods, and then that's where the story begins.
Well, let's talk about how we get into this story. It's kind of clever the way the writer gets us hooked into this story. She starts in the 21st century. Who wants to jump in about the technique she uses to tell the story? Desiree? Oh, I'm sorry, Danielle?
She really just kind of starts off with Agnes and...
Oh, we didn't say who Agnes was.
Oh, Agnes is the girl that's going through and having the visions of Mary.
Oh, I'm confused. Oh, Allison. That's the character we didn't talk about yet.
Yeah, Allison is a woman, and she works in a museum, and she also wrote a book about Mary and some of her other friends from colonial times. And she was very, very curious about Mary, and nothing was really sure. There wasn't very much information on her. So when Agnes contacted her about maybe knowing something about Mary, she was very interested because there wasn't a lot of information out about her. So we kind of got hooked with that whole...
Did you get hooked? That's my question. Did you get hooked on this story? Did you like the story? Did it keep your interest from beginning to end?
The beginning was a little bit slow, but then once I got into it, it was just you couldn't put it down.
Desiree?
Yeah, the beginning was a little slow, but I found parts inside the book where it would take me longer to read than other parts because I found them less interesting. But overall, the book was a really good book.
And Brianna?
Well, since I had already read Witch Child, I was more familiar with what was going on with Mary and Agnes's premonitions.
Were you interested in, because she sort of tried to tie up all the loose ends from Witch Child in this book. Were you interested in those loose ends, or did you really care at this point?
Well, the story ended, Witch Child ended with Mary fleeing, so I wanted to know what happened to her and what she did.
Now, you guys have studied some American history, so help us put this into context. It takes place before or after the Puritans, but before the French and Indian War. I mean, was this a period of history you guys were aware of or familiar with? It doesn't even take place, it takes place on the East Coast, so it's often strange. I always found as a California kid to read about history that takes place someplace else.
It wasn't really that familiar because we don't really learn about a lot of Native American history and all that kind of stuff. We do a little bit, but not as much as this book. And I don't know, I thought it was interesting because you kind of got a little piece of something that you didn't usually.
What about you, Brianna? I'm sorry, Desiree?
Yeah, I think it was different than what you would usually learn about. So it was kind of interesting to find out, like, almost from a different point of view of what was happening. Like, instead of seeing the Indians as savages, you would see them as, like, you know, kind people.
Also, history always seems to tend to talk about wars. You know, I always seem to think that it's like wars and treaties. You don't see the way that real people lived their real lives during a particular period. So how did the details resonate with you?
For the Native Americans, she used a lot of detail, like what they did in their daily lives, and that was part of what Mary had to go through. So a lot of that was in the book. And
so you got a lot of winter information that you never read anywhere before?
Oh, well, like, it's different how they deal with, like, the different climates, and like she has to like go to different places, and so they have like different lifestyles for different.
Talk to me a little bit about, it's predominantly women characters in this book, and it's a female point of view. What did you glean from that? I mean, did it give you insight? Did you think it rang true? Was it a different way of writing? Danielle?
I think it was a little bit more almost personal, because it kind of felt like a diary almost, because you could really fit into the shoes of Mary and kind of experience what she was going through. And I don't know, I thought it was, I think that her being a female writer, Celia Rees, and Mary being a female, it kind of gave me something like, kind of a foundation.
Do you think it would have been as popular with boys?
Well, there was some stuff at the beginning that, like, I think if you're a girl, you could only understand. But
like what? Like what?
It said in the book at the beginning something about how her aunt was talking how things come natural to her. And I think it was just like, if you were a guy, it would be kind of different.
Well, tell me, I mean, explain that experience to guys, because guys will be watching this. What are things that women or girls sense that maybe go over the heads of our male counterparts?
Well, I don't know. I think it was just maybe me reading it, I understood it better, but I don't know. It seems like when you're reading it, you can, if you were reading it from, like, if a male were to write it, you would probably feel the same way. Like, you would feel kind of confused because it's not really from, you know, your perspective. So, but I think males would probably understand too, but not as much as we would, though.
Brianna, do you think women have a different sensibility about the world? Do they sense things differently than men do?
Well, I felt like the way Agnes received, like, the visions, she wasn't like, she knew how to deal with it because her aunt was a medicine woman, so she wasn't like afraid of it, or she didn't like put up resistance to the vision. So I think
that whole idea about a medicine person and how they're received in various cultures, you could really see the difference in how people were perceived. It's like one of those gifts that's also a curse in so many ways. Yeah. Why do you think, Danielle, that it was not always welcomed, but seen as suspicious and scary?
I think that people don't really know a lot about it, and when something's strange to you, you kind of are scared about it because you don't know a lot of information on it, and you're not that familiar with it, and anything new is pretty scary. So,
what do you think, Desiree?
Yeah, I think when like she said, when you're not familiar with something, it is kind of scary. But maybe also because they were maybe scared, like her friends were scared for her, maybe. Because, like, it says how in the beginning Mary has to run because she's seen as like a sorceress. And I know it says throughout the book that she has these friends, and maybe it's almost like if they're scared for her, not just of her, but for her sake, they're scared for her.
Brianna, what do you think about that, about the way that people who have healing powers were sort of almost automatically branded as witches in certain cultures?
Well, as Danielle said, I think that if they don't know a lot about something, they're going to be afraid of it because you don't know how to deal with it and what they can do to you, if they can harm you, or things like that.
So is there anything in our culture today, because we're so smart, you know, we know everything that they didn't know back then. Is there anything that we sort of treat that way also? Maybe not calling it a witch, but immediately kind of cast aspersions on as it being the other out there? Can you think of?
Aliens.
Aliens, okay, all right. Of course, we aren't quite sure about that,
but we're pretty scared of them, and they're kind of not that, well, they're alien to us.
And they're in every television series this fall, I've noticed. What else? What else do we see as the kind of unusual or scary or weird?
I guess sometimes people, if they meet someone who maybe knows more about something they do, or they might feel not necessarily scared, but like almost like different from that person because they feel like, oh, well, they know more about this, why? Or if it's like a group of people, they feel almost like if they're like weird or different from them.
Well, if we think about, you know, your school as a settlement, you know, like one of these settlements where people were living, or as a camp, an Indian camp, and are there some people within your tribe, your school, who some people treat as that other? Brianna, is there a group or a person or someone who's ostracized in the same way that the civilization ostracized Mary?
Well, there's always going to be people who hang out with like their friends, and there's different groups, but we don't view them as different people. We just view them as, oh, they hang out with their friends, we hang out with our friends.
Danielle?
Cliques.
Cliques,
I
okay.
think are a very big thing in pretty much all junior high, high school age, starting to get into kind of find who you are. And I think that kind of almost brands people as a certain person that they may not be. But
is there any way, I mean, sometimes kids who come from different schools, I know, get stuck into that kind of a rut, but is there also, can you identify kids at your school who are sort of, you know, they may have like a black mark practically walking over their head that you probably shouldn't have lunch with them because you'd be branded as not quite cool, or?
Yeah.
And why, and who are not give me specific names, but why are those people picked out?
I think they're picked out because you're almost scared of them because, like, oh, what could they do to my reputation, all those kind of things. And I think people are just kind of looking out for who they're viewed as. And when you see someone that's not quite the same as you, you don't really get them almost.
Desiree, what do you think about those? Do you know there's certain people? Would you agree that there are certain people in here?
Yeah, I think mostly the kids at my school are separated by almost the type of music we listen to.
Really?
Really. A lot of the kids that listen to like listen to like rock and roll and stuff like that, they all hang out together. And then the kids that listen to like hip hop and rap, they all hang out together. But it's not as if like we don't like each other, because we all have friends of like all the different like groups at our school. But I really wouldn't say there's anyone that I wouldn't like, you know, because if you have your own friends, I think that's who you stick to. That's, you know, you never like think about sitting with someone else. So it really doesn't come up the issue.
Well, are there kids though at your school who no one seems to sit with? You know, they just never found their group of friends or their group of colleagues, cliques?
I'm really not sure.
Yeah.
I don't know.
What do you think, Brianna?
Well, there's always those who like, they feel themselves as outcasts. So they're like either afraid to socialize or afraid what people are going to judge them as, and so there's people.
Let's talk about the writing style in this book and whether it was successful or not, or whether you would have done it differently. Because she does use diaries, dreams, third person, first person. I mean, it's sort of a mishmash of different voices in here. What do you think of the writing style? Who wants to jump in? Danielle?
I think it was a little bit confusing, like when she would switch from Agnes to Mary, because you kind of always had to read the title on the chapter and see who you were, and, well, not who you were, but who you were reading about, and see what time it was and all that. So I think that was kind of hard, but I also liked it because you kind of got a sense of two views of it, and not so much like when you're reading a book in first person, it's all like there's one side of the story and there's another side of the story, and there's what's really true. And I think that you kind of get a mixture of all those with the writing style that was used in Sorceress.
So do you think it was a good choice that the writer made, Desiree?
I think what I found trouble on was the jumping from the back and forth. Like other books I've read who've had like two characters like that, or the jumping with the back and forth, they've separated the book almost like the first half is about one, and then it'll say like part two of like this. Like I would find myself reading without the heading. I would find myself just reading, and then I would have to read the heading because I would be like, wait, this didn't just happen. It doesn't fit with what's going.
Who is this and what am I doing here?
So I think if like I like the way the style is when you write it in part one and part two, because it's just easier to follow along.
So you were one of those readers who just doesn't read the headline, so to speak.
Yeah, I just kind of read on through, and then I would figure out this wasn't what I was reading before.
Well, Brianna, this is different than the way she wrote Witch Child. Describe the differences.
Well, as you said, it uses first person and third person, and Witch Child, it's just straight Mary. It's like you're reading from her diary, and she's telling you her story. And in Sorceress, you're getting part of the present and part of the past. Like it's happening through another person's eyes.
So why do you think Celia Rees decided to do it that way with this book? Why didn't you think she just continued the story from Mary's point of view?
Well, I think to add more interest in case, like if someone read Witch Child and wasn't interested in the way it was written, to add more to intrigue the reader, and it also it gave more history on Mary in a way because she was of Native American. She transformed into a Native American. She had descendants, and so I think that was.
How true to you guys did the details on the Native American culture seem?
Oh, they seemed. I felt like I was in the shoes of the person that I was reading about the entire time. Like you could tell exactly what they were doing. You could tell exactly what time it was, what season. You kind of felt like you were watching a movie, and you could just see everything.
So good details
Yeah,
then, as far as
a
you're
lot
concerned.
of really good details.
Desiree, what'd you think?
Yeah, the description she gave about like the time, the place, and even things around her. Like if she would talk about a tree, she wouldn't just say a tree. She would like explain how it looked, and like it was almost like you can picture everything how she wanted it to be, and it was really like good for me because when I read a book, I like to be able to know, like see things, and so.
Well, is that something you can take away with you to when you're doing writing for class assignments or journaling or short stories or whatever you're writing? Is it something you would think to use yourself?
Yeah, because I notice when I write things, if I have a long period of time to like complete it, I'll find myself reading it, and if I can't picture something, I'll find myself going back and fixing things.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah.
No, that's really smart. What do you think about the details in this, Brianna?
Well, there's some we don't learn about, as we said, we don't learn about a lot about Native Americans. So it gives us a foundation to like picture them and their rituals and their way of life. So it taught us.
I'm really surprised. So you guys don't have at some point in your history classes Native American studies?
A little bit, but like this year, 8th grade year is mostly like American history.
Right, and
like,
where does it start?
Well, we started mostly like with colonial, like the Declaration of Independence and that kind of stuff.
Because this stuff takes place a long time before.
They didn't really talk that much. Like they talked a little bit about how the Native Americans were kind of choosing sides, British or English, but there wasn't that much detail about how they really lived their life.
Did this book make you want to read more about Native American culture, either here in California or on the East Coast, or in between? Desiree?
For me, kind of, because my dad's side of the family comes of Native American heritage, so it was kind of interesting for me to learn more about it, and it made me, want to go on the internet and like look up stuff. So.
Well, what have you asked your dad over the years?
Oh, I have. I've asked him lots of stuff about it, and he tells me like what he knows. So it was it was kind of interesting, and he actually started reading it, and he was like, "This makes a lot of sense to me," and I was like, "Oh, okay."
Well, I thought the interesting thing also was about this oral tradition that happens in Native American culture, that the stories are passed down, you know, orally, that I don't know that I mean, we have it within our families. I can tell you stories, you can too, about, you know, things that happened when you were little kids that become part of the family lore, and they tell those stories over and over again. But I don't know how many of us can talk about what happened generations past. What about you, Brianna? Did it make you want to do more research or think about Native American culture at all?
Well, it definitely made me think about it because there's so much of Native American heritage in the book, and so it's a work of fiction, but it seems so real that I want to research about it.
Have any of you been to that part of the country, either from Boston up to New England, up to Canada, that area there? No. No. Yeah, I went to Maine this summer, so, and I've been there before, so in my mind I could actually picture a lot of that. It's so different from California. It's always so hard for me, until you've been there, if it's someplace so different from California, it's just hard to imagine that there's that much water, for one thing.
Yeah.
It's like there's lakes everywhere, and you think, there's no lakes anywhere here. Well, what would you compare this book to? Is it like another book that you can think about? Does this remind you of another book you've read?
Not really.
Yeah.
Because I'm more the type of person where I like to read like more like drama and more like present day stuff.
Like?
And so this was like The Click, Lizzie Harrison. I read all 3 of those books, and I'm more into like present day kind of books, and so this was kind of a big jump for me, but I still like was really interested in it, so I thought that it would be pretty good for a lot of readers because I could read it, and I pretty much stick to what I like, and so.
So this pushed you outside of your comfort zone. Do you like history as a subject at school?
Not really.
Not really, okay. Because it doesn't seem...
It doesn't, like to me it doesn't really seem that important because it's in the past and we should live in the future, but after reading this book it definitely has made me a little bit more interested.
Huh, that's so interesting. What are you a history buff, Desiree?
Well, certain things in history.
Tell me why and what.
I especially like to read about like Holocaust times and slavery times, and
You like hard things.
yeah, I don't really like reading about like the different wars because they tend to bore me. So.
Yeah.
But other stuff, certain things I do like, but certain things I couldn't read.
It's interesting to me that you like Holocaust stories, because that to me that's one of the most difficult periods of history to actually read about.
Yeah.
Why? Why does that call to you?
I don't know. I've always liked those stories. I think it's because when I was younger, my dad watches a lot of the History Channel, so I've always watched a lot of that kind of stuff, so I've just always been into that.
Okay. Are you a history buff, Brianna?
No, but...
Tell me why.
The material isn't that interesting, and different teachers have different styles of teaching it, so it depends on that also. But some things are intriguing.
Tell me what.
Well, last year we learned about like Rome and Greece, and this year we're just learning about like the founding of our country. So that's kind of interesting.
Which is more interesting, Rome and Greece or this country's founding?
I think Rome and Greece, because I like learning about things like not like out of our country and like different places.
Oh, you sound like you want to travel. Since you guys said that this style just doesn't even remind you of anything else you've ever read, huh? No. Would you recommend it to other readers?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Why?
Because once you get into the book, it's like you can't even put it down. Like for me, when I would find a part that I would just like, I mean, I kind of relate with Desiree in the fact that like she would go through times where like you would read 2 pages in a half an hour, and then you would go through times where you would read 30 pages for a half an hour. So.
Recommend the book?
Yeah, I would, but only for like specific readers though, because if you like things like that are way out there, like fantasy, like this wouldn't really
Yeah,
keep
it's
your
not.
attention. But
No.
for real, like in-depth readers, it's a really good book.
All right. And how about you, Brianna?
I think that it would fall in the category of like mystery in a way, because things don't just jump out at you. You have to read them to find out what's going on.
All right. Well, thanks very much, you guys, for coming out and talking about this particular book. We want to thank your teacher as well, Michael Craig, right? That's his name? Craig Michael?
Michael.
I couldn't remember. The man with two first names from Edgewood Middle School out in West Covina. And we want to thank Danielle Johnson, Desiree Espinoza, and Brianna Lujan. And if you want to be on the Book Club of the Year, all you have to do is send me an email at bookcluboftheyear, smush it together, @cs.com, and we'll hook you up. Thanks, you guys. Appreciate that. Tell me what else you're reading right now.